Everything you were taught about financial security is officially being tested. While most people are waiting for the economy to go back to normal, a quieter force is already draining their bank accounts. And it isn't just inflation. It doesn't arrive as a bill in the mail or a warning from your bank. Instead, it's a wealth erosion driven by things we use every day. Subscription-based living, AI-powered pricing, and digital costs that didn't even exist 5 years ago. If you're following the old-school savings advice your parents gave you, you're likely falling behind without even realizing why. The rules of the game have changed, and yesterday's strategies are becoming today's financial traps. So, what is this invisible tax exactly, and how do you pivot your money to actually grow in this new economy? Today, I'm uncovering the hidden forces eating your wealth and the specific steps you can take to stay ahead. Let's get into it. For most of modern history, financial security followed a simple formula. Earn more, spend less, save consistently, and over time, those savings would create a foundation for your future. For generations, this advice worked because the world around it was built differently. A person could work a stable job, save money, buy assets, and reasonably expect that discipline would translate into progress. But the environment has changed. The problem facing many people today isn't that they don't work hard. It's that the financial landscape itself is becoming more complex. The things that quietly influence your wealth are no longer always obvious. They don't always appear as a major expense. They show up as small adjustments. A subscription price increases by a few dollars. A service adds a new premium tier. A product becomes smaller while the price stays the same. A feature that was once included becomes an extra monthly payment. Individually, these changes seem insignificant. But when hundreds of them happen across the economy at the same time, they create something much harder to see. A slow erosion of purchasing power. An invisible tax. The reason this matters is because most people think about wealth in terms of income. How much do you earn? How much did your salary increase? How much money is sitting in your bank account? But wealth is not just about the number on your statement. It's about what that money can actually buy. $1,000 today and $1,000 5 years ago are not necessarily the same thing. The value of money depends on the cost of everything around it. Housing, technology, services, energy, education, healthcare, the tools needed to participate in modern life. And increasingly, those tools are becoming digital. This is where a new type of financial pressure has emerged. Think about how different life looks compared to just a decade ago. A smartphone is no longer just a phone. It's your bank, your workplace, your communication system, your entertainment center, your identity, your access point to the modern economy. But maintaining that digital lifestyle comes with an expanding list of costs. Cloud storage, software, streaming, online security, AI tools, digital memberships. The modern consumer is not just buying products anymore. They're buying access. And access usually comes with a recurring payment. This creates a strange situation. Many people feel like they are spending more, but they cannot identify exactly where the money is going. There is no single villain, no one massive expense. Instead, there are dozens of small financial commitments competing for attention. And because these payments happen automatically, they often escape the same scrutiny we give to larger purchases. You might spend weeks researching a new television, but never question a subscription that quietly takes money from your account every month for years. This is why invisible expenses are so powerful. They don't require a conscious decision every time. They simply continue. But subscriptions are only the beginning. Because the next evolution of this problem is even more complicated. Technology is changing not only what we buy, but how prices are created. The old world had fixed prices. A product had a price tag. A service had a monthly cost. Today, prices are increasingly influenced by algorithms. Demand changes. Consumer behavior changes. Market conditions change. And businesses now have the ability to adjust pricing faster than ever before. This means the relationship between consumers and prices is entering a completely new era. One where the price you see may depend on far more than just the product itself. And as artificial intelligence becomes more integrated into the economy, this trend is likely to accelerate. The question is no longer just, how much money do I make? The bigger question is, how much of my money is actually working for me? Because in a world where expenses can quietly rise, where digital costs continue expanding, and where technology is reshaping entire industries, Simply holding money may not be enough. The people who understand these changes early will have a major advantage, not because they can predict the future perfectly, but because they can recognize the forces shaping it. And the first force we need to understand is the one hiding in plain sight: the rise of the subscription economy. The subscription economy didn't arrive overnight. There was no single moment where the world suddenly decided everything should become a monthly payment. Instead, it happened slowly, almost invisibly. First, subscriptions were convenient. Then they became normal. Then, for many people, they became unavoidable. And that's what makes this shift so powerful. Because the biggest changes in the economy rarely happen through one dramatic event. They happen when something new becomes so normal that people stop questioning it. Think about the way we used to buy things. You bought a movie. It was yours. You bought software. You owned it. You bought a product. You kept it. The transaction ended. But the digital economy introduced a different model. Companies discovered that instead of making money from one-time purchases, they could create something much more predictable: recurring revenue. A customer who pays once is valuable. A customer who pays every month for years is far more valuable. From a business perspective, this model makes sense. It allows companies to invest, improve products, and create long-term relationships with customers. But from a consumer perspective, it creates a completely different challenge. Your expenses stop being events. They become background noise. And background noise is where financial leakage happens. Because humans are naturally focused on big decisions. We think carefully before buying a car. We compare prices before purchasing a house. We negotiate salaries. But small recurring expenses often bypass that same level of attention. A £10, £15, and £20 subscription doesn't feel like a financial decision. But combine 10, 20, or 30 of these payments, and suddenly the difference becomes significant. The danger isn't one subscription. The danger is subscription creep. The gradual expansion of your monthly financial commitments until they become a permanent part of your lifestyle. And companies know this. Modern businesses have become incredibly good at reducing friction. One-click purchases, automatic renewals, free trials that transition into paid plans, personalized recommendations. The easier something is to start, the less likely people are to stop. This isn't necessarily malicious. It's simply how modern business models are designed. The goal is convenience. But convenience has a cost, and that cost is often invisible. There is another shift happening at the same time. Something economists and analysts often describe as a change in the quality of what consumers receive. You may have noticed it yourself. A service increases its price, but instead of receiving more value, you receive the same amount, or sometimes less. More advertisements, more restrictions, more premium tiers, more features locked behind additional payments. This creates a strange feeling many consumers experience. I'm paying more, but getting less. This is sometimes called platform decay. A product starts by delivering enormous value to attract users. Then, once millions of people depend on it, the experience changes. Prices increase. Costs are optimized. The platform becomes more focused on extracting revenue, and the user experience slowly shifts. The interesting thing is that this isn't limited to entertainment. It's spreading across almost every area of modern life. Software, work tools, education, fitness, transportation, communication, even professional development. The tools required to stay competitive are increasingly becoming services you rent rather than assets you own. And this creates a new type of financial pressure. Because the cost of living is no longer just about basic necessities. It's about the cost of participation. To work, to learn, to compete, to stay connected. This is especially important as artificial intelligence becomes more integrated into everyday life. 5 years ago, many AI tools were experimental. Today, they are becoming productivity tools. For businesses, for creators, for employees, for entrepreneurs. And just like previous technological shifts, those who adopt new tools early may gain advantages. But access to those tools often comes with another subscription, another monthly payment, another expense added to the growing digital stack. And this creates an important question. What happens when the tools needed to increase your income become another financial burden? Because this is where the invisible tax becomes more complicated. It's not just about spending. It's about dependency. The modern economy increasingly rewards people who can access the right technology, information, and tools. But accessing those tools requires money, which means your ability to create wealth can increasingly depend on how effectively you manage these hidden costs. The people who ignore them may find themselves constantly trying to earn more just to maintain the same lifestyle. The people who recognize them can start making intentional decisions. So what does this mean? Does it mean every subscription is bad? No. Some subscriptions create enormous value. A business tool that saves hours every week may be worth far more than its monthly cost. An educational platform that helps you increase your income could be an investment. The problem isn't paying for value. The problem is paying for things you no longer value. The difference is awareness. Because the first step to protecting your wealth isn't always earning more. Sometimes it's discovering where your money is quietly disappearing. But subscriptions are only one layer of this new economy. Because the next transformation is even bigger. The way companies decide what you pay is changing. Prices are no longer just set by humans looking at costs and margins. Increasingly, algorithms are making those decisions. And when artificial intelligence enters the equation, the entire relationship between consumers and pricing begins to change. Because the future of money isn't just about what you buy. It's about how the system decides what things cost in the first place. For most of human history, pricing was relatively simple. A business calculated its costs. It looked at demand. It considered competitors. Then it set a price. That price might change occasionally, but the process was slow, predictable, visible. Today, that world is changing. Because businesses now have something previous generations never had. The ability to process enormous amounts of information instantly. Every click, every search, every purchase, every pattern of behavior. All of it creates data. And increasingly, algorithms are using that data to influence how products are priced, marketed, and sold. This is the beginning of a new economic reality. An economy where prices are no longer just determined by production costs, but by prediction. Think about how often you already experience this. You search for a flight. The price changes. You look at a hotel. The price changes. You order transportation. The price changes. You shop online. The recommendations change. The offers change. The experience is personalized around you. This is not random. Modern businesses are becoming increasingly sophisticated at understanding demand in real time. And artificial intelligence is accelerating that process. The goal is simple. Match the price with the highest amount a customer is willing to pay. Now, this doesn't mean every company is secretly manipulating every consumer. Pricing has always been influenced by supply and demand. Businesses have always tried to understand customers. The difference today is speed and scale. A company that once made pricing decisions once a quarter can now make adjustments continuously. A market that once moved slowly can now react instantly. And that creates a new challenge for consumers. The world around you is becoming more dynamic, while your income often remains relatively fixed. This creates an interesting imbalance. Companies can optimize. Algorithms can adjust. Markets can react. But individuals usually can't. Your salary doesn't automatically update every time the cost of living changes. Your savings account doesn't automatically adjust based on rising expenses. Your financial plan doesn't automatically evolve with every technological shift. This creates a gap between the speed of economic change and the speed at which most people adapt. And that gap is where many people begin to fall behind. But AI isn't just changing prices. It's changing the value of human time. For decades, one of the strongest financial advantages a person could have was developing a valuable skill. Education, experience, specialization. Those things created earning power. But every major technological revolution changes what skills are valuable. The internet changed communication. Automation changed manufacturing. Mobile technology changed consumer behavior. And now artificial intelligence is changing how knowledge work gets done. The question many people are asking is, what jobs will AI replace? But that might not be the most important question. The bigger question is, which people will use AI to become more valuable? Because throughout history, technology has often created winners and losers. Not necessarily because technology itself is good or bad, but because some people adapt faster than others. The people who learn how to use new tools can multiply their productivity. The people who ignore them may find that the value of their existing skills begins to change. And this connects directly back to the invisible tax. Because staying competitive in a modern economy increasingly requires investment. Better tools, better technology, better information, better skills. The cost of remaining relevant is rising. A person in 2026 may need access to resources that simply didn't exist 10 years ago. AI assistants, advanced software, online learning platforms, digital infrastructure. These tools can create enormous opportunities, but they also create new expenses. The modern worker isn't just competing with other people anymore. They're competing in an environment where technology itself is constantly moving the finish line. This is why simply saving money may no longer feel like enough. Because the economy isn't standing still. Your money has to exist in the same world that you do. A world where businesses are becoming more efficient, where technology is accelerating change, where entire industries can transform in a few years. This doesn't mean everyone should take unnecessary risks. It doesn't mean every person needs to chase the latest trend. But it does mean financial awareness matters more than ever. Because ignoring change is still a decision. And this brings us to one of the biggest misconceptions about wealth. Many people believe wealth is created by protecting what you have. And protection is important. But historically, significant wealth has often been created by owning things that grow alongside the economy. Businesses, assets, skills, ownership. The question becomes, if technology is changing the economy faster than ever, how do you position yourself on the right side of that change? Because the biggest financial divide of the future may not simply be between people who have money and people who don't. It may be between people who understand how the new economy works and people still following rules from the old one. And this leads us to the next part of the story, because the old financial playbook was built for a different world, a world where saving money was enough, a world where stability looked very different. But in today's economy, the rules are being rewritten. For decades, the path to financial security was built around one simple idea. Be responsible with your money. Spend less than you earn. Save the difference. Avoid unnecessary risks. It was advice passed down from generation to generation. And for many people, it created a strong foundation. But the economy that shaped that advice is changing. The question today is not whether those principles still matter. They do. The question is whether they are enough. Because the financial world your parents grew up in is not the same world you are navigating today. A few decades ago, keeping money in a savings account felt like a straightforward strategy. You earned interest. Your money sat safely. And over time, that safety created confidence. But wealth is not only measured by how much money you have. It's measured by what that money can do. A number in your bank account is only valuable because of what it allows you to buy, what opportunities it allows you to take, what freedom it gives you. And that means purchasing power matters. Imagine two people. Both have the same amount of money saved. One person keeps all of it sitting in cash for years. The other person uses a portion of their money to own productive assets. Businesses, companies, income-generating investments, assets that have the potential to grow over time. The difference isn't that one person is responsible and the other isn't. The difference is that one person understands a fundamental concept. Money has a job. And if money is not working toward a purpose, it may slowly lose effectiveness. This is where many people misunderstand investing. They think investing is only about chasing higher returns. But at its core, investing is about ownership. When you own a piece of a productive asset, you participate in its growth. A business creates products. A company solves problems. An economy expands. And ownership allows you to benefit from that expansion. Again, this doesn't mean every investment succeeds. Markets rise and fall. Assets carry risk. There are no guarantees. But historically, productive assets have been one of the primary ways people have attempted to grow wealth over long periods. The challenge is that many people are still approaching today's economy with yesterday's mindset. They focus entirely on saving money, but not on building ownership. They focus on reducing expenses, but not increasing their ability to create income. They focus on protecting themselves from change, instead of positioning themselves to benefit from it. And this is where the wealth gap can begin to widen. Not simply because some people earn more, but because some people understand how money behaves differently in a changing economy. Look at the biggest technological shifts throughout history. The Industrial Revolution, the Internet, the smartphone era. Each one created enormous opportunities. But the biggest winners were often not just the people who worked harder. They were the people who recognized where the world was moving. They adapted. They learned. They invested. They owned pieces of the systems being created. And AI may represent another major shift of this kind. Artificial intelligence is changing productivity. It's changing businesses. It's changing how information is created and consumed. For investors, this creates opportunities. For workers, it creates pressure to adapt. For consumers, it creates a world where the cost of staying competitive may continue changing. And that brings us back to the invisible tax. Because the biggest financial mistake people can make is not simply spending too much. It's failing to understand the environment their money exists in. However, there is an important distinction. The answer is not to panic. It is not to abandon all savings. It is not to chase every new investment trend. Financial security still requires balance. Cash provides stability. Emergency savings create protection. Debt management matters. Budgeting matters. The foundation still matters. But foundations are not the entire building. A person can have a strong foundation and still fail to build anything on top of it. The new financial reality requires a different question. Instead of asking, how much money should I save? A more powerful question may be, how can I make sure my money is positioned for the world that is actually coming? Because the future will likely reward adaptability. People who continue learning. People who understand technology. People who own productive assets. People who build multiple sources of value. And this is where the conversation moves beyond inflation. Because the biggest shift happening in wealth creation is not just about prices going up. It's about ownership. Who owns the technology? Who owns the businesses benefiting from change? Who owns the assets producing value? And who is simply paying for access? That difference could become one of the defining financial questions of the next decade. Because the next wealth divide may not be created by a lack of information. Information is everywhere. The divide may come from whether people know how to use that information, whether they can separate fear from opportunity, whether they can adapt before change forces them to. And in the next part, we're going to look at the new wealth gap forming between those who are positioned for the future economy and those who are still trapped in the financial rules of the past. Throughout history, major economic shifts have always created a divide, not necessarily between the people who work hard and the people who don't, but between the people who recognize change early and the people who realize what's happening after the opportunity has already passed. The Industrial Revolution created new industries. The internet created entirely new markets. The smartphone transformed communication, commerce, and entertainment. And now artificial intelligence is beginning to reshape the way businesses operate, how people work, and how value is created. The question is not whether change is coming. The question is, who benefits from it? Every major technological shift creates two groups. There are those who simply consume the technology, and there are those who understand how to use, build, or own the technology. The difference between these two groups can become enormous over time. Think about the early internet. Millions of people used websites, but a much smaller group built the platforms, businesses, and infrastructure that powered the internet economy. Millions used smartphones, but a smaller group owned shares in the companies creating the hardware, software, and ecosystems behind them. The pattern repeats. The people who benefit most from major transformations are often the people who understand ownership. This is the core idea behind building wealth. Not simply earning money, not simply saving money, but owning assets that can continue creating value. A worker earns income by trading time for money. An owner creates systems that can generate value beyond their own hours. That distinction has always mattered. But in an increasingly automated economy, it may matter even more. Because technology has one unique characteristic. It scales. A person can only work a limited number of hours. A company can serve millions of customers. A digital product can reach millions of users. An algorithm can process millions of decisions. The ability to scale is what creates enormous economic value. This is why many investors focus on productive assets. Because productive assets have the ability to participate in economic growth. A business can increase revenue. A company can innovate. An industry can expand. An investment portfolio can grow alongside the success of the businesses it owns. Again, this does not mean success is guaranteed. Markets are unpredictable. Businesses fail. Investments lose value. Risk always exists. But the underlying principle remains. Ownership creates exposure to growth. Now, This doesn't mean everyone needs to become a full-time investor. It doesn't mean everyone needs to understand every market movement. In fact, chasing every trend can be one of the fastest ways to lose money. The goal is not to predict the future perfectly. The goal is to build resilience. Because the future is likely to reward people who are prepared, people who understand their finances, people who control unnecessary expenses, people who continue developing valuable skills, people who own assets that align with their long-term goals. But there is another important shift happening. The definition of an asset is changing. For a long time, people thought about assets in traditional terms: property, stocks, businesses, cash-generating investments. These still matter. But in a rapidly changing economy, other forms of ownership are becoming increasingly valuable. Knowledge, skills, networks, digital products, intellectual property, the ability to use technology effectively. In the AI economy, your ability to adapt may become one of your most valuable assets. Consider the difference between two people. Person A learns new technology only when they are forced to. They wait until their industry changes. They wait until their employer requires it. They wait until everyone else is already adapting. Person B starts learning early. They experiment. They understand new tools. They find ways to increase their productivity. Over years, that difference compounds. Not because one person is smarter, but because one person positioned themselves earlier. This is how wealth gaps are often created. Not overnight. Not through one single event. Through small advantages that compound over time. A better skill. A better investment habit, a better understanding of technology, a better financial system. Each advantage may seem small, but combined over years, they can create a completely different outcome. And this brings us back to the invisible tax. Because the biggest threat isn't just that prices increase. It's that many people may spend their entire lives trying to keep up with a system they don't fully understand. They earn more, but their expenses rise. They work harder, but their time becomes more expensive. They adopt new tools, but only as consumers. Meanwhile, others use those same tools to create, invest, and build. The difference is not just income. It's positioning. So what does positioning actually look like? It starts with awareness. Knowing where your money is going. Understanding what you own. Recognizing which expenses create value and which ones simply drain resources. Then comes intentional action. Building financial systems that work automatically. Investing consistently. Improving your skills, creating opportunities. Because in a world moving faster every year, waiting for certainty can become its own risk. The future will not belong exclusively to people who predict every market movement. Nobody can do that. It will belong to people who understand the direction of change and position themselves accordingly. The people who ask, how can I participate in the growth happening around me? Not just, how can I protect what I already have? Because protection matters. But participation creates opportunity. And now we reach the final question. If the world is changing this quickly, if technology is accelerating, if the invisible costs of modern life continue expanding, what practical steps can someone actually take today? How do you build a financial system that protects you from hidden erosion while still allowing you to participate in future growth? That's what we're going to break down in the final part. After everything we've uncovered, one thing should be clear. The biggest financial risks are not always the ones that make headlines. They are often the quiet ones. The expenses you stopped noticing. The habits you never questioned. The opportunities you ignored because they seemed too small. The financial decisions you postponed because they didn't feel urgent. The invisible forces shaping your wealth are rarely dramatic. They are gradual. And that is exactly why they matter. Because small changes, repeated consistently over years, can create enormous outcomes. So the question becomes, how do you respond? How do you protect yourself in an economy where technology is accelerating, prices are changing faster, and the old financial playbook is being challenged? The answer isn't fear. It's awareness. It's building a financial system designed for the world you actually live in, not the world that existed 20 or 30 years ago. The first step is simple. Audit where your money is going. Most people know their major expenses. Their rent, their mortgage, their car payment, their groceries. But many people underestimate the impact of smaller recurring costs. Open your bank statements. Look at every automatic payment, every subscription, every renewal, every service you are paying for each month. Then ask one question. Is this expense helping me create value? Or is it simply becoming another habit? Because the goal isn't to eliminate everything. The goal is awareness. A subscription that saves you time or helps you earn more may be worth keeping. A subscription you forgot about for 2 years may be quietly working against you. The second step, create financial flexibility. One of the greatest advantages a person can have is not just money. It's options, an emergency fund, low unnecessary debt, controlled expenses, the ability to make decisions without being forced into short-term choices. Because financial pressure often comes from having no room to move. When every dollar is already committed, every unexpected event becomes a crisis. Flexibility gives you time, and time is one of the most valuable financial assets. The third step, understand the difference between saving and building wealth. Saving protects money. Investing gives money the opportunity to grow. Both have a role. A strong financial foundation usually requires both. You need liquidity for emergencies. You need stability. But over long periods, many people look toward productive assets as a way to participate in economic growth. That could include diversified investments, businesses, real estate, or other assets aligned with your goals and risk tolerance. The important principle is not chasing the next big thing. It's understanding ownership. Because ownership is the recurring theme behind wealth creation. The wealthy are not wealthy simply because they have money. They are wealthy because they own things that produce value. Businesses, assets, equity, intellectual property, skills, systems. The goal is not just to earn income. The goal is to gradually build things that continue creating value. The fourth step, invest in your ability to adapt. The economy of the future will reward people who can learn. Technology changes. Industries change. The skills that create value today may not be the same skills that create value tomorrow. The people who thrive will likely be those who remain curious, those who understand new tools, those who continuously improve. Artificial intelligence is not just a technology story. It's a productivity story. The people who learn how to use it effectively may create new opportunities for themselves. The fifth step, think long-term. One of the biggest mistakes people make is reacting emotionally to every change. Markets move. Headlines change. New technologies appear. Predictions come and go. But building wealth has historically been a long game. The goal is not to win every day. The goal is to build a system that can survive different environments. A system based on discipline, awareness, ownership, adaptability, patience. Because the future will not be won by the people who know every answer. Nobody does. It will be won by the people who ask better questions. Questions like, where is my money actually going? What am I paying for that no longer creates value? What assets do I own? How am I increasing my ability to earn? How am I positioning myself for a world that is changing? Those questions create awareness. And awareness creates action. The invisible tax is powerful because it hides in plain sight. It doesn't require one dramatic mistake. It works through thousands of small decisions. A forgotten subscription, a neglected skill, money sitting idle for too long, a refusal to adapt. But the opposite is also true. Wealth is often built through thousands of small decisions. A smarter financial habit, a better investment decision, a new skill learned, a cost removed, an opportunity recognized. Small actions compound. The future economy will create challenges, but it will also create opportunities. Technology will disrupt industries, but it will also create new ones. AI will change jobs, but it will also create new ways to work. Markets will experience uncertainty, but uncertainty has always existed. The people who succeed are rarely the ones who predict everything perfectly. They are the ones who stay informed, stay adaptable, and keep improving. The invisible tax is not just about losing money. It's about losing awareness. Because the moment you understand the forces affecting your wealth, you regain control. You stop reacting. You start making deliberate decisions. And that is the difference between simply surviving a changing economy and positioning yourself to benefit from it. The economy is changing faster than ever, and understanding what's happening beneath the headlines has never been more important. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you subscribe because every week we break down the hidden forces shaping your money, your investments, and the future of wealth. So you're not just reacting to the news, you're understanding what's really driving it. If you found value in today's video, leave a like and let me know in the comments. What is the biggest invisible tax you've noticed in your own finances? because the best insights often come from real experiences. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, invest wisely, and I'll see you in the next deep dive.